Hey everyone, this is Matt with Learn Everything About Design, and in today's video, we're going to talk about what's new for Fusion March 2026. Spoiler, there's not much. Now, I'm actually okay with there not being a lot. More updates tend to break things. This update I didn't do last week because the only thing that I felt worth covering really was isoparametric curves, and it didn't show up for a few days on my install. So in this video, we'll talk a little bit about a couple of the updates that might be important to you on a general day-to-day basis. We can also go to the What's New document. There are updates in a lot of areas. I don't want to say that there are no updates to Fusion, but there are updates to things like machine simulation and machine building in the manufacturer workspace. There are toolpath calculation updates, updates to simulation, updates to electronics. There are updates to the Manage extension. So if you're on a collaborative environment hub or you're using the Manage extension for check-in, check-out functionality, there are improvements in those areas. In terms of design tools, the only thing we really got is that isoparametric curves. If you installed or you went through the update last week, you may have noticed the Autodesk Assistant pop up. This popped up for me. Now, I'm on a commercial license and I'm not on an insider build. And so for me, it popped up and I was a little surprised because I know that the insider builds have access to the Autodesk Assistant. If you don't know what it is, it's their agentic AI system or co-pilot or whatever you want to call it. It'll be like a chat on the right-hand side of the Fusion canvas area. And it's meant to do all sorts of things. So everything from finding settings inside of Fusion to creating geometry. This was debuted last year at Autodesk University, and the inception of it, this document, I'll leave this document or the link to this in the description of the video. This will talk about kind of what they were thinking it was doing. Autodesk has had an AI research division for several years now, 2017, 2018, something like that. So this isn't new. This has been in process for quite a while. And I'm going to do a video just on my own opinion on AI tools. It'll be more of a rant than a how-to, so I don't want to do that in this video. But I'll leave this in the description of the video if you want to read into it. If you did see it pop up, you would have had to go through the process of accepting the privacy policy and things like that. I'm the kind of person that reads all of those things, and that's just the way that I operate. So I'm not gonna go through that in this video, but it did pop up. I don't know that it's there for hobby or personal license, but for commercial license, it did pop up for me. Now, in terms of the tools that we actually did see for this update, as I mentioned, there were a lot of changes and updates to various areas. In terms of the design, the only thing that we really got is the isoparametric curve. And so let's talk a little bit about what that is. So typically, when we are dealing with complex surfacing and we want to extract data from a surface, let's say that we're going to be creating another surface and we want internal rail or a guide for a sweep or for a loft or something like that. The way that we historically did that is by going to Project Include and getting an intersection curve on the surface where our sketch plane hits it. Then from there, we can use tools like Blend Curve with tangency or curvature continuity, and then we can build a curve in that area. This allows us to use surface tools and create a loft. Let's go from, say, this edge to this edge. And then for our rails, we use the bottom, use that interior one, and then the top. And then we can apply things like tangency to these, and we can do tangency on these edges or curvature continuity. We're not really walking through the process in this video, but you can use these options and you can change things like curvature continuity instead of tangency if you want G2 continuity. It does introduce some problems based on the way the curves were created, for example. So again, for this example, I'm just going to use tangent. Now, the downside to this is that when we're creating an intersection curve, it is going to be on a plane relative to the surface. Now, you can get more complex intersection curves by doing things like creating a surface extrude and creating an intersection curve where that surface hits another surface. But generally, this is how we operate. Now, what happened when we have access to the isoparametric curve, let's go and rotate this around, is now what we do instead of dealing with a plane, we're going to use this to extract UV curves from the surface itself. Now, if you don't know what a UV curve is, think about an XY coordinate system that's applied to a complex surface. Now, it's basically an X and a Y direction, but it's not mapped to the actual X and Y coordinate system. And so if we look at this from the side, it's going to be really hard to see because it's red on blue. This is an absolutely horrible color scheme. I wish that we had a bit more control over the colors inside of Fusion. But basically, what we see here is that the curves are not going along in a planar fashion. It's not on the XY plane. It is actually matching the surface, and that's the benefit of these UV curves. Now, that's not to say they're all benefits here. There are some downsides as well, but it gives us the ability to extract these curves directly from the surface. Now, you're saying, okay, what are the downsides then? Well, for me, the downsides are the fact that we don't really have precise control over where these intersection points are going to be. We can control whether or not we're going in the U or the V direction, whether or not we do a single intersection curve or isoparametric curve or distributed, and we can increase the quantity, but these are going to be based on a percentage distance relative to the entire face. So what that means is if we're trying to create curves that intersect with these, we really have to do this in sort of a 3D sense, and it's not going to work in a traditional sense where we'd have a 2D sketch plane. So you can see I've got 3D sketch enabled over here. And so if I want to connect these, I'll use something like blend curve, I'll go to G2 continuity, and I'll connect these two together. I can also do this over here and okay that. And so the downside here is that even though we're in a 3D sketch, we can see that this curve is going up a little bit. If we come over here to the backside, you'll note that it doesn't match the curve on the back end of our part. And so it's not quite a shortcut or simple solution. There's still more work that needs to be done in order to make this truly be a beneficial use case. You can double click on the icon that appears and you can go back and you can make changes. But if we do that, you can see here that it actually does move these curves around because it respects the constraints. But once again, it's not going to be kind of like a quick option or a shortcut for you to do this. So let's go back down to 3. And so from here, we finish a sketch. We would generate a surface like a loft, and we go from 2 edges here. We would add some rails. I'm going to skip this one because it's not really in the right location. And then again, use tangency or curvature continuity based on your requirements for the surface. So this doesn't open up additional options for us like G3 continuity, for example. And once again, there are still things that we need to do to really make this work, but it's a nice option allowing us to extract more curvature-based curves out of existing surfaces to use for things like lofts and patches or sweeps or other things like that. So again, this is pretty much the main tool that I thought was beneficial to the update. The next thing is really a very specific use case. If we're creating construction geometry like a point at a vertex, we now have additional snap points that are available. And really where this is a benefit is if we're going to use these snap points for other things. Generally, in my past 10 years of using Fusion, I very rarely make construction vertices. And so again, this tool to me is not super beneficial, but as we hover over the surface, you'll just note that we've got some additional curves. You can see here that there's a snap point that's at the end of that curve. There's one right in the middle. And so if we wanted to extract any data, like the location of that, let's go ahead and do this again, put one there, and do this again and put one there. You can see that we are able to pull out some data from that surface by creating those vertices. And then you could use it for something like an offset construction plane. We'll go to object and we'll go basically just up to one of those vertices. And so it can be useful, especially in very specific use cases. What I would really love to see as an option is the ability for Fusion to auto resize these planes. Maybe that's an option I don't know about. If you select a plane, you have to grab these edges and pull them out, or the corner points and pull them out. I would love it if that was an option, if you could just right click and resize the plane based on the geometry. That to me would save a lot of time. The Vertex thing, it's nice to have, but it's not really saving me much in terms of design effort and time. The next thing is going to be basically the ability to look at a sketch and how the view changes. And so most of the time when I model, I leave my view on perspective with ortho faces. And what this means is if I go to a default view like left, it goes to an orthographic view, or top goes to an orthographic view. And this is what I want to see when I'm creating a sketch, because we don't really want any distortion in that. If we happen to leave this on perspective, you'll notice that we get that distortion that we get because of the way our vision works. We've got two eyes, they're looking at an object. And when you have an object like a bus or a tractor trailer or a train, the front of it is much closer to you than the back. And so it looks like the front is bigger and the back gets smaller. You can see this with roads long distances away. They kind of fade away to a point. And that perspective is great for certain things, reviewing your design. But when you're trying to sketch, it's kind of a pain. The change that we got is in the preferences, just a little bit more control over what happens when you look at sketch. And so right now I have it set to always orthographic. You can turn this option off, which means that when you start a new sketch, it's not going to rotate normal to that view. Now you have the use camera settings. So if you keep your camera settings on perspective all the time, it won't go to an orthographic view in a sketch. I don't really know why you would want that personally, but the option is there if you happen to want to use it for some reason. So again, that's the update. That's the thing that we have, whether it's helpful to you or not. Some of the other changes again are very specific. So last year we started to get constrained components. There have been updates to constrained components. There's no components in this design right now. Let's go ahead and just convert one of these things. So we've been getting updates to constrained components for the past several releases. They've added things like the center option and the tangent option, which we talked about last year, November timeframe, I guess. What we've seen now is the ability to configure constrained components, and that's really the big change. What I've noticed over the past probably year of Fusion as configurations have become more prevalent is just more and more features getting added to that, whether it's joints or constrained components or appearances or surface tools. Those keep getting rolled into every update. So if you do use configurations a lot and you do use constrained components for putting your designs together, you now have the ability to configure that. Now, one of the other big claims that happens with Fusion for, pretty much every update, you see the things that are like 10% faster opening a design or 20% faster calculating external references. Personally, I have not seen any performance improvements, if actually probably the opposite of that. Now, that's not to say that they aren't there. We've got very specific things that happen in our computer systems, Windows 11, the jump from Windows 10 to Windows 11. I saw a big impact in the performance in Fusion personally. I don't know if that's directly related to Windows 11 or if it's the, porting it over to support Windows 11. I know that there is a change in the OS level of that. I don't know what the cause is, but I know that every time there's a claim that things are faster, I don't really see them on my end for whatever the case might be. Now, again, that's not to say that there aren't improvements. Most of the time I work in hybrid designs or part designs. I don't do a lot of big external sort of bottom-up assemblies. That's really where the performance gains are supposed to be coming from. So if you do a lot of that and you have seen improvements, leave a comment and let me know. But again, for the most part, I don't really see the performance gains, and there's not really any good way to track that. So that's just something I keep in mind. Now, that's pretty much it. Unfortunately, it's a pretty light update, and The only thing that I really, looked forward to is those isoparametric curves. If there's anything else in the update that you have questions on or you want to see, leave a comment and I can get back, either answer you or we can do follow-up videos. We do have CAM content on our Learn Everything About Design website. We don't do much of it here on this channel, but I would say that probably the manufacturer workspace, the updates there are probably the biggest improvement in terms of all the workspaces that would impact your daily workflow. So if you do use that, I think this is probably a good update for you. Everybody else is just kind of a meh update in my opinion, but that's all we got for you. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. As always, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.